You've spoken in interviews about really wanting to take steps to humanize Sarah Palin and treat her as fairly as possible within the context of this story. And I think you've done that quite admirably.
Well, you know, I actually wanted to humanize everybody in the story, and I never really saw it as the Sarah Palin film, certainly not a biopic. I tried to humanize as best I knew how, as in the way any storyteller would, or any filmmaker, every character in the story. And she's certainly one of the most compelling, and definitely had probably the strongest public construct sort of persona. And I thought that might be interesting to, you know, reinterpret that through a performance of a great actress. But I really felt the same about Steve Schmidt's character, about John McCain's character, and Sarah Paulson, you know, Nicolle Wallace, who was played by Sarah Paulson, the other person that works with Steve Schmidt, and everybody else. But those four especially, that trying to ask the audience to get in their shoes and face the dilemmas and the crises that they faced, and know enough about them that you could kind of understand and empathize and maybe even relate, you know, with what they were up against.
Well, thinking about them as characters, you know, I mean, we all went through this, you know, just a few years ago, it seems. But sort of separate from that, thinking about them as characters, Steve Schmidt really emerges as sort of the protagonist of this story, and kind of a tragic character in some ways.
I think tragic is right, and I always saw Steve Schmidt's story as being the sort of soul at stake in the process, that he really did have an almost Faustian dilemma, you know, that he could win the election, he thought, and hopefully do the things he believed were the right things by winning. So he'd get, you know, if their main thing was to defeat Obama, which is what they were obsessed with, then whatever it took to do that seemed to him justified. But later, I saw him go on 60 Minutes and say, guess what? It wasn't justified, you know, basically. And now he's saying it much more directly than he did. And that tragic realization that he might have, as I think he's put it to me in some form, that he thought that loyalty and integrity could be the same thing. And he started realizing that in his case they couldn't. And that was like, wow, that's a lot to take in about yourself if you're that guy, or and also a lot to realize that from our point of view, that people like Steve Schmidt are facing dilemmas like this all the time in rooms every day, all day long, and government is at least as much about those dilemmas as it is about the kind of outward appearance of government through the candidates.